Welcome to the Invested Dads Podcast, simplifying financial topics so that you can take action and make your financial situation better. Helping you to understand the current world of financial planning and investments, here are your hosts, Josh Robb and Austin Wilson.
All right. Hey. Welcome back to the Invested Dads Podcast, a podcast where we take you on a journey to better your financial future. I am Austin Wilson, research analyst at Hickson Zerker Capital Management.
And I'm Josh Robb, Director of Wealth Management, also at Hickson Zerker Capital Management. Austin, how can people help us grow this podcast?
Yeah, we would love it if you would subscribe. If you're not subscribed, so you get new episodes when they come out each and every Thursday. And we'd love it if you'd leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever platform you listen to. Please leave us a review. We would love to hear from you. So, Today, I don't know if anyone else has seen, but it's making headlines.
Yes.
Recently,
just a little bit ago,
we've seen the Mega Millions lottery get over $1 billion
with a B
dollars.
And there was a lucky winner in Illinois, I believe.
There was.
Yeah.
This is an episode that we're going to frame as a follow-up because earlier in 2022, we did an episode talking about lump sums and some options you had with those and some thinking we had. Well, let's talk about that a little bit more today and maybe talk about some of the pros and cons and pitfalls and other thoughts we have if you were to be the lucky winner and get your $1 billion, because that's quite the windfall.
Now, the odds of winning the lottery are like 1 in 300 and some million.
Probably worse than that.
I think
rather
I saw
go
it was like
get bit by a
300
shark.
million, 1 in 300 million. And the question is then, why do you care? Chances are pretty small. Well, a lot of people may experience through other avenues some form of lump sum received, whether it's an inheritance, maybe severance package from leaving an employer, whether it's a lawsuit payout. There's all different ways you could receive a lump sum. So you don't have to just win the lottery for it. In that last episode, Austin was talking about, we talked a lot about the investing piece, dollar cost averaging, putting it in right away, which one's better historically. But today we're going to talk about what are the other impacts of receiving a good chunk of money.
Right.
And so the first one I can think of is taxes, right? So if you get a big chunk of money, depending
like the
on
state taxes,
yes, Dallas
taxes.
Yes. So if you, depending on how you get it, there are different tax impacts.
Right.
So if you win the lottery, for instance,
oh boy, here's the numbers.
You owe taxes on that one, right? Yeah. It's going to be income to you, and you're going to pay income tax.
A lot.
State and federal.
Of taxes.
You will pay a lot. So, that $1 billion winner, now that's the annuities dollar amount, the lump sum's less. We don't have to get into all that, but it was still like $700 million or whatever. So that puts you in the highest tax bracket
by a
unfortunately.
lot. Yeah.
So you're paying high tax on that. State, federal, you're probably looking at close to 40%.
Oh yeah.
When you add it all together.
We should also probably clarify that though we're using the lottery as an example, we are not condoning gambling or lottery buying of any sort. In fact, I've never actually bought a lottery ticket. I'm not saying it's bad if you do, but we're not condoning that. And generally speaking, because of the odds, it should never be viewed as an investment.
Yep.
Maybe not
Stick
the
with the
wisest
50-50 draft because you have
At
the
the football
50-50
game?
chance. Yeah. It means you have a 50% chance, right? Isn't that what they mean?
That's of course
Like
what
every
it
time I
means.
buy it, there's a 50%
And
chance.
you lose most of the time. So how does
I don't
that
know.
work?
What's happening?
But just a little clarification to say we're not condoning the lottery.
Yeah. So on the same side of that would be severance from working. Those type of things will also be considered income. Any lump sum you receive that gets flown through your tax return as income, you're going to owe taxes on that. On the reverse side, depending on how you get it, but a lot of inheritance will be tax-free to you because the estate pays those taxes.
Right.
From a tax standpoint, if you receive some inheritance, you may not have to worry about taxes at that moment, but depending on what happens going forward, whether it's in an IRA or it's in taxable account, you may owe taxes in the future. When you get a lump sum, be tax aware. How does this impact me? For instance, if I get a lump sum and let's say it was settlement for an issue and I get a chunk of money, I may have to relook at changing my estimated payments or my withholdings because now all of a sudden I may have jumped a tax bracket and I'm not withholding enough for my other forms of income. So there's just things you have to look at from a tax standpoint when you're getting a lump sum of money.
And if you were to come into that, probably one of the best people to talk to right away is your CPA.
Yes. Anytime you're going to get a chunk of money, talk to your accountant and say, what do I need to be aware of? What should I be doing? Setting some money aside, making sure it's not all tied up when taxes are due. Yes, definitely.
So another thing that if you trip across some lumps, you probably should go to the doctor.
Yes. Lump sums.
Some lumps.
Yes.
So, but anyway, so that's taxes. What is another impact we need to think of when we're saying, hey, lump sum here, big chunk of money, wasn't expecting. Another component, go.
estates. What does my estate planning look like?
Because this will change it.
It will. It could potentially, again,
if it's big enough.
If we're looking more realistically at severance, inheritance, things like that, it may not make it so you're quitting your job and not doing anything. But you want to make sure that if something were to happen to you, this new asset is going to be passed on the way you want it to.
Right.
Going back to the inheritance, if I receive these new accounts, I'm going to need to assign a beneficiary to these accounts or make sure that my will adequately reflects that these type of accounts will be passed on directly. From an estate planning, this new lump sum of something comes in. I want to make sure if something were to happen to me that it continues on. I don't want it just being passed to the random person that I don't know based on however the court decides. That's not ideal. So from an estate planning standpoint, make sure that those line up. Or maybe it's an adjustment to say, hey, you know what, I was going to be giving it this way, but now I have more. I may want to include some charities into my estate planning, and you can start working through that. While you're calling your CPA, maybe after you hang up with them, call your attorney or whoever does your estate planning. Again, the Mega Millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, that's a whole nother aspect. If you look more realistically, even receiving a car or house from an estate, that changes things, and you want to make sure it's lined up correctly. So that's kind of what we're looking at here when this lump sum comes in.
Yeah.
With that, we got our attorney, we got our CPA taken care of.
Yeah, that's two of the three big hitters.
What else do I need to do? Well, the financial planner needs to be there. So then that comes to, all right, what are some of the pitfalls that we've seen, that I've seen as a financial advisor, is sometimes when you receive a big chunk of money, you then start looking at your bucket list and saying, oh man, look at some of the things I can do now.
Right.
And you may spend some of that lump sum and quickly get into a higher cost of living and get comfortable living a little bit higher than you can afford long term. Because once that lump sum is gone and you're used to a higher standard of living, it's a little harder to go back down. And so you do need to be careful. Again, we're talking more realistic that, if you got an inheritance and maybe it was a $50,000 inheritance, which is great. And it's not necessarily life-changing money forever. But if you start upping some of the things you're doing or going out and buying cars and things like that, then the money's gone, but you still have all these payments. It gets a little hard. One of the biggest pitfalls I see is that getting a big chunk of money, you start doing things and the money doesn't quite go as far as you think it's going to. And that's huge.
This makes me think.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to put a caveat to Apple Podcasts or whoever might try and flag this. I'm not saying a bad word.
Okay.
There's a TV show called Schitt's Creek.
Okay.
SCHITT.
Yes. Yeah. It's the
Maybe
town.
there's one T.
It's the name
of the
town.
People. Don't flag me as explicit.
Don't flag.
So in that show, there's a waitress at the diner named Twyla.
All right.
Twyla's a waitress at the diner. She, the entire series for like 6 seasons, doesn't appear to have a dime because she's a waitress, right?
Yes.
It comes out in the last episode.
No, spoiler. Hang on. Spoiler.
If you don't want to...
I haven't watched that show because I thought it was a bad word, but now I guess I can watch it. Okay.
It's a name of a town, Josh.
Okay, I got it. Yeah.
That she had won the lottery.
Oh, wow.
And so she actually had a crap ton of money.
Yep.
And actually what she did, she lived very modestly. And so no one thought she had won the lottery or done anything. So she's actually, kind of done it right.
Yes.
But she actually ended up buying the diner where she worked.
There you go.
That was her one big thing at the end. She didn't do it till the end.
Till the end.
So she'd been sitting on all this money for years and years. Yep. So anyway, that's what this makes me think of. So don't flag me as explicit. It's a TV show based on a town name.
Okay.
But
you're right. And let me come back to say, I don't have a problem as a financial advisor of you utilizing lump sum to do some fun stuff with. But you have to have a plan. You have to understand how that fits in your overall picture.
The people who go in with no plan,
that's a problem. But if you are, let's say, behind on your retirement where you need to be, then spending all that and not helping catch you back up is not a great long-term solution. But there's a lot of people, in fact, more often than not, I'm encouraging them to spend some of the money to enjoy it because that would be a lot of times what that person had intended. They're giving this money as an inheritance, for an example, and the goal would be, hey, I want you to use this, enjoy this. And if sometimes they're like, well, I'm afraid to spend it. I just want to sit in the account, and it just sits there like, well, what's the purpose? I don't know. I don't know if it would feel good spending it. Well, I don't think they just gave you the money to look at it, So there's a balance there between spending it and enjoying it and utilizing it for a long-term plan. And I think you got to find that balance between the two.
Yeah, like if you've got, like what you would tell someone is if you've got all the boxes checked,
Yep.
it's okay to spend your money.
Or in moderation, do a little bit of both.
Right.
Like help fill a little bit. And even if it does get you all the way there, you're closer, and use a little bit and enjoy it now, or pay off some of those debts, or whatever it is that gets you happy with where you're at.
So Josh,
Yes.
I have a dad joke of the week.
I need
for
a dad
you,
joke.
And
I do.
then
Yes.
I have a great question. for
Okay.
you. This is from my terribly good dad joke book my wife
Ooh,
got me
yes, there
a
you
long
go.
time ago. Why did the dad stay home after eating seafood?
Oh man, why would you stay home after eating seafood?
Because he felt a little eel.
Eel.
He felt a
man.
little eel,
Eel.
which is a delicious sushi.
Okay. I'll take your word for it.
Okay, so my question for
Yes.
you, Josh,
Yes.
is
Mhm.
say you did not go out and buy a lottery ticket. Someone gave you the lottery
Yes.
ticket, and this lottery ticket won.
Yes.
Say the lump sum amount was $700,000. So after taxes, you're well set.
Yes.
It's $500 million or whatever at the
Yep.
end of the day. What would you do
With $500 million.
with $500 million?
You know, I would probably invest the money, and my wife always laughs. She's like, boring. That's the boring response. And then set up a distribution plan with $500 million. You could live off of the interest and dividends and be not only comfortable, but finding ways to give that money away.
You couldn't give it away fast enough.
Yeah. And that was part of what I was saying. If you get that lump sum, it gives you that ability to look outward. At $500 million, your finances are set. Now you can start being an impact to others, charities that you like, causes that you're passionate about. And I think that's where the enjoyment would come from for me, is finding those opportunities to enhance other people or other causes. That's what I would be doing. And you just kind of set aside and say, I just a little bit of that income earning, and I'm good.
So if the Invested Dads podcast all of a sudden is
went
just
huge.
the Austin
Just went
show,
huge.
then that's because Josh is all set.
Yeah.
With
But
his
that's the other thing
$500
is, if you like what you're doing, I don't see why you'd
Right.
quit. Just because you have a lot of money, I would still want to be doing something that help people, and that's
Right.
what I'm doing right now, and I enjoy it. What would I splurge on?
Ooh.
That's the second question.
Yeah,
I'm
'cause-
going to swing that back to you.
Okay.
'Cause I just told you moderation. So if you're talking lottery, you got to be careful not letting people know, because there's some crazy people out there. So you have to be careful with your splurging, in my opinion,
Yeah.
on that. But let's just say I have extra money in for whatever reason, but I can spend it and it's not going to cause safety concerns for the rest of my family. Okay.
Yep.
So I just have money and I have extra. I think a splurge for me would be having a vacation home near water, a lake or something, because that would be fun. That would be where I'd be at.
Yeah.
With the kids, it's all about memories, spending time. But the other one, and this is kind of like an outlet, this is more a bucket list thing, because I think I could still do it either way, whether I get a bunch of money or don't, is my grandpa had his pilot's license and used to fly.
Oh, yeah.
And unfortunately, I never got to fly with him because by the time I was grown, he had stopped flying.
Right.
And so it's always been on my bucket list to get my pilot's license. I've done nothing towards that and don't plan to, with how busy I am with the kids and everything. But down the road, that would be cool. And I don't have to like own an airplane or anything. You can get your license and kind of rent to try that.
Right.
But I thought that would be a cool thing to do.
Yeah.
He told me stories of like flying over the 4th of July and looking down at the fireworks. That just seems like a cool thing to do.
It does.
And just the excitement and coolness of flying an airplane would be. You talk about a splurge, that's where I would be.
And even that splurge would be very doable.
Like I said, it's still a bucket list for me one way or another, because
Right.
it's not like I need a fleet of airplanes.
No.
I just need, and like
not
where
looking
we
for a
live, there's
jet.
a local airport where I think you can still get
You can.
time there.
Yep.
And get your license. So that's me. I'm going to flip it around. Same question back to you. What would you do? But then also like a splurge.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the easy answers for me are I would try and still live a pretty modest life. Maybe we'd slightly get nicer vehicles or whatever, but we wouldn't go buy Lamborghinis
Yeah.
or something. Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe one.
Maybe one. But, it's shoring up, retirement savings.
You'd be
shoring-
driving a Tesla.
Oh,
you would be driving
I
a
got
Tesla.
hooked. And
You would.
That's a whole different episode.
I know,
My
but
first
you would be driving
experience
a Tesla.
Tesla. Yeah, I
But
think
again,
I could afford it at that point. But yeah, shoring up, finances and looking for a way to create some sort of generational giving wealth, where obviously that's more money than any realistic person would have any business spending on their own. I would view that as crazy if you could do that.
Yeah, that'd be like a challenge.
Right.
Challenge accepted. I will spend this all.
So I would, if you set it up to have you could literally set it up to be invested in some sort of trust format where you could fund your church or charities, or on hold, you could fund a church plant somewhere.
Yeah.
And do something crazy.
I would think to
Fund
like
it
a
forever.
private foundation is where you'd be, because then you could be a part of that decision-making process, but be able to, benefiting more than just you and your immediate family.
Exactly. So things like that would be cool, but also just to have money set so that my kids would have just whatever we needed.
Yep.
Would not be a question, Hey, you want to go to school? It's already taken care of.
Yeah.
Or whatever. So those would be some cool things. As a splurge, I would like to buy, like you, property. I think property is a good thing. I think I could probably swing it.
Mm-hmm. You got the money.
I got the money, but
the money.
I think because my wife is a beach lover, I would try and buy some property on the beach.
Ooh, yeah.
But make it big enough that it can be beach and then like a good sized property to have like cabin and some dirt bike trails and all kinds of stuff. So a vacation property on the beach, I
with
think.
some land.
With some
ride
land.
your dirt bike.
Yep.
on.
I think that would be it. But
there you go.
maybe a Rolex. We'll see.
A nice watch.
Why not? That's not even going to put a dent in it. So anyway, Josh, any other thoughts on things we need to keep in our mind as we're saying, hey, lump sums? What are just things to consider?
Yeah. And again, the caveat being most likely you're looking at a smaller lump sum than the mega millions, $1 billion.
Yeah.
But when you get a unexpected or maybe an expected sum of money, really just being thoughtful in the process. So like we said, the CPA, the attorney, working through, talking to your financial advisor about the plan. But then the other thing with that is looking at and saying, okay, am I teaching my kids what to do? Because they're watching, right? If you have kids, they're watching. And what you don't want to do is set the impression that any kind of additional money is just spent, right? The habits, the teaching that. So I think, being transparent, if there is a lump sum with maybe some of the family members that are old enough to understand to say, hey, look, we got some extra money and this is what we're planning on doing with it. We're going to do this, this, and this is why. I think you could definitely take a lump sum and turning it into a teaching opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
And that's, to me, is, for our generation, we're a little more open about finances than some prior generations, which I think is a good thing. But the idea is, that if you can help them understand, if they get in that situation, then they'll also know, okay, I need to start talking to these people and thinking through it. There's going to be generational wealth being passed. We're seeing that happening now with the baby boomers starting to retire and the accumulation of wealth they have, that is going to be passed through. And if there could be some transparency and communication to know kind of what the goals and intent is, then it's less confusion than I just found out that I'm going to get $1 million from my parents and no one's prepared me for this. That's the worst thing that you want.
Yeah.
It's because more often than not, then in a short period of time, there's $0 left and there's nothing from all that hard work from the prior generation to show in the next
one. And that is the pitfall of the lottery. Is there are a lot of lottery winners, and the statistics show that they do very, very poorly at managing it. Most people end up in the same or worse financial conditions after they won the lottery than before.
Yep.
So it's just a cautionary tale, I think, of lump sums and not being prepared for what to do with that. Yeah. And I think you brought up a good point about your kids is being a teaching opportunity is depending on the amount of lump sum, you could do something so that you and your family have no need to work or think about anything for the rest of your life or their life or all of it. It's a trust fund life. You don't need to work, don't need to think, you just spend money all the time, right? That's a temptation. But I think of something that, Warren Buffett has said with obviously a very wealthy guy.
He's got some money.
Got a little bit of money, a little bit, even more than that, than that Mega Millions.
Yeah.
But he has really set up his wealth so that his kids are going to get some money, but have to have a need to do something, which gives them some sense of purpose in life and keeps them from turning into those financially irresponsible people.
Yeah, we have those conversations a lot. Like I remember talking to another advisor, and the same thing is you have those generations who, if you're not the one that earned the money, it's less valuable to you. And so if you are the next generation or the third generation to receive those, you look at some of those large families, back in the day, like the Rockefellers and those type of ones. And as that generation moved from the generation that created it down, there was less value in that. and less desire to preserve and continue that on.
Right.
And you're right. And it doesn't have to be billions of dollars for that to be true, is that, if your parents worked really hard and they were able to have something left over to give you, and then it's squandered, it's kind of like, okay, what was the point in that whole process if there wasn't some education to go along with it on the why? And that, I think that's huge. And so one of these things with a lump sum is, if you get that, maybe think about creating a letter that explains the hope that this thing continues on. And so if the lump sum is big enough, whether it's inheritance or something, that you say, you know what, this is actually going to last beyond my generation, you start educating and preparing the next generation to be good stewards of that and moving it forward.
Absolutely.
So that would be the last one I had when it comes to lump sum. Communication is key, whether it's talking to your CPA or attorney, making sure everybody's on the same page with that, talking to your financial advisor, making sure that whatever this lump sum fits into your plan. But then finally, communication with the next generation. If your goal is for this to pass through, to make sure they understand the why behind it. Because like I said, if you don't work as hard for it, it's less valuable and you tend to be less attached and squander it. We've seen that a lot in our world.
Yep. All right, Josh. Well, thank you for some great thoughts on lump sums and just things to consider, because there's a lot of good that can come out of it. There's a lot of bad that can come out of it if you handle it incorrectly. So thank you for those thoughts, and thank you for listening to this episode. If you like this episode or had someone questioning what to do with a lump sum, share this episode with them.
Yes.
This could give them some tips and things to think about.
Yep.
Share with any family and friends that may be interested in that. And as always, as a reminder, you can email us any ideas you have or any questions you have to hello@theinvesteddads.com. We would love to help answer those questions. And hey, we may turn it into a podcast episode.
That's right.
So until next Thursday, thanks for being here. Have a great
Talk
week.
to you later.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Invested Dads podcast. This episode has ended, but your journey towards a better financial future doesn't have to. Head over to theinvesteddads.com to access all the links and resources mentioned in today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and we had a positive impact on your life, leave us a review, click subscribe, and don't miss the next episode. Josh Robb and Austin Wilson work for Hicks & Zerker Capital Management. All opinions expressed by Josh, Austin, or any podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Hicks & Zerker Capital Management. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Clients of Hicks & Zerker Capital Management may maintain positions in the securities discussed in this podcast. There is no guarantee that the statements, opinions, or forecasts provided herein will prove to be correct. Past performance may not be indicative of future results. Indices are not available for direct investment. Any investor who attempts to mimic the performance of an index would incur fees and expenses which would reduce returns. Securities investing involves risk, including the potential for loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment plan or strategy will be successful.